Our next presentation is from Toby Cumming, who is from Sustainability Victoria. Welcome, Toby. Great to have you here. And Toby is a leader in the agency's hugely successful Healthy Homes program, which we've already heard a little bit, tiny little snippet about earlier today. So I'll let Toby explain the program, not to steal your thunder, Toby. So thank you again, and over to you.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thanks to VCOSS for organising this really important work. Before I start, I wanted to acknowledge Dr. Matt Soberg, who really was the driving force behind the Healthy Homes program, going back some years now. I mean, this had its genesis in 2016. And one of the things I think we really need systemic change in health and energy. And I think before we get there, it's important to change the mindset. And this is what Matt was about. This is what the Healthy Homes program was about. This realization that upgrading someone's home isn't just saving a little bit of energy. It's a public health intervention. And people don't naturally make that link between housing and health and energy. But the Healthy Homes program was really designed with that in mind. And I feel like that's what we're here talking about today. So I think this is very well suited. Yeah, so just to give a quick background on the situation with Victoria's housing, we've got about 6 million people, we've got about 2.5 million households. We know that more than half of our households were built before 1991, which is when any energy standards came in. Before that, you could basically do what you liked. In those houses, they average less than 2 stars. So currently, if you build a new home, it's got to be 6 stars, soon going to 7. But our existing housing stock, a lot of the old stuff built before 1990 averages about 1.5 stars. So this is the scale of the problem. You can see there the average energy bill for the base house. And we've talked a little bit about the Victorian temperate climate. What some people don't realise, if you don't actively heat, about 2/3 of our houses spend the year, or about 2/3 of the year, below 18 degrees. And so the World Health Organization talks about 18 degrees as a threshold for good health, and you want your house to be above that. And yet we clearly need heating. You know, climate change is happening, things are getting warmer, but at the moment, Victoria spends a lot of the year with cold homes. This is a graph I really like presenting when thinking about the problem, the systemic problems with how much people spend on energy. And so sadly, this only goes up to 2018, this data, but it's pretty self-explanatory. So you can see the blue line at the bottom. If you're not low income, you spend about 2% of your yearly expenditure on energy. And that's pretty unchanging over the last 15 years or so. If you are in a low income bracket, you started off in 2006 spending about 6%, and back in 2018, you moved up to about 12%. And I think, knowing what we know about gas and electricity price rises in the last few years, that line would continue to separate. So I think that's really what we're talking about here. The relationship between income, energy needs of your household, and health is the missing piece of that puzzle that I'm going to talk about today. So back to the temperature. Why does cold temperature matter? Well, cold temperature matters because it affects your health. And I think one of the most convincing demonstrations of this came from Europe some time ago now, in 1997. They looked at lots of different areas in Europe, which is useful because Europe has very cold parts and quite warm parts, temperate parts along the Mediterranean. So what they convincingly showed was that you get higher mortality in winter. So there's cold-related mortality. We've known that since the 1850s. The first studies, someone noticed a spike in deaths in London, and actually it was winter-related. And there was lots of different wrong theories about that, why that was initially. We understand a bit more about what it does to your blood pressure and different health outcomes now. And so what this study showed was that thermal efficiency of homes was a major factor. So you can see there, comparing Athens and Finland, when you've got mortality increasing for every 1 degree below 18 degrees. Athens is 2.2%, so 7 times the rate of Finland at 0.3%, even though Finland's much colder. And if you want to understand why that might be, they tested the living room temperature of these homes when it was cold outside, when it's 7 degrees outside. Finland's homes 2.5 degrees warmer than the Athens homes because they're built for the climate. They're built for cold. You know, people that have lived in Europe can understand that. And I think people who've lived in share houses in Melbourne can understand that too. Then they're not built for the cold. And it looks like the Athens homes weren't built for the cold either. And this has health effects. It's not rocket science. We can do something about this. And really the research coming out of New Zealand about 15 years ago now was really groundbreaking. This is Philippa Howden-Chapman's work showing large health benefits from retrofits. So the Warm Up New Zealand program, on the back of a couple of randomized trials in 07 and 08, showing the health benefits of fixing really poor, thermally inefficient homes. So the Warm Up New Zealand program was on the back of that research. It's a great example of research into policy outcomes, I think. And you can see there, big money in New Zealand spent on it, about $250,000 insulation retrofits delivered. And they looked at the cost benefit. For every $1 they spent insulating, they saved $4. And a little bit of that was about energy and reducing energy, but you can see there 99% of it was due to health outcomes, people using fewer health services, not going to hospital as much, not using as many medications. New Zealand is colder than Australia, but we wanted to see whether this would work in the Victorian environment, which as we've established is too cold for a lot of the year if you're not heating your home. And so this is what we set out to test. Can we improve thermal comfort in winter? Can we reduce healthcare costs? Can we reduce energy costs? Looking at the problem from every angle. This is really a summary of healthy homes on one slide. 1,000 upgrades. Most of them were in Western Melbourne. You can see the local government areas there in orange, and about 200 of them were up around Shepparton in the Goulburn Valley. We were offering a free home upgrade. And we're aiming for $3,500 per home. So that's not very much. This is a pretty minor retrofit. This is not fixing everything about a house you might want to fix. It's going for the biggest bang for buck items. And the things we were doing were things like insulation, draft sealing, efficient heating, covering the windows. And it's really important to note this was focused around winter, making homes warmer in winter. That was totally our focus. We didn't look at summer and cooling at all. The clever thing, I think, and this is what Matt really drove, was that we were upgrading 1,000 homes, but it was designed as a randomized control trial so we could get important data as well. So 500 homes were upgraded before winter and 500 were like the control group. We asked them to wait for one more winter and then upgraded them afterwards. We compared those two groups in the 3-month winter period on all sorts of things, as I'll show you. So we needed to screen for eligibility, first of all, because we're looking at homes, you had to be low income and you had to have a chronic health or social care need. So we're trying to target vulnerable households. And we came to your home, got your consent, asked you some questions. We did the scorecard to map the home and the energy efficiency of the home. And then we randomized, like a coin toss, to intervention or control. Intervention homes were upgraded before winter, then the winter period. Then everyone got the second visit. We asked questions again, and then the control homes were upgraded. So that was the design. And impressive, I think, for Sustainability Victoria as a government agency. We don't normally do things like randomised trials, but my background was research, and I was very impressed that this was on the radar. And I think as a result of this rigorous design, the data we've got is really being taken seriously and has some credibility. So you're not expected to read all this. This was the comprehensive data collection with the energy at the top and the health at the bottom. The main thing to note is it was heavily skewed towards objective data. When we wanted to know about energy, we didn't just ask people how much energy they used. We got data from the distributors. We didn't just ask about how you are feeling and self-report health data. Or we did ask that, but also we had a lot of linked data, as you can see there, from hospital admissions, PBS records for medicines, et cetera, et cetera. So what did we find? The main primary finding was we made the homes warmer, which was good. That's what we wanted. 1/3 of a degree doesn't look like much, but the statisticians out there will know that 0.05 is a bit of a threshold for significance. So P is 0.02, can be considered meaningful and significant. We saw the largest impact in the morning, which is when your heater's been off for the longest, and is when your house is coldest. So we're changing the intervention homes for about 0.5 degree warmer at that point. And keeping in mind that while those temperatures don't seem like they're changing massively, the New Zealand results, which had very impressive health effects, were also based around less than a degree improvement in the house. So every 0.5 degree really matters. So when you look at that as number of minutes exposed to cold, it was about 43 minutes a day in the intervention houses, less exposed to cold than the controls. When we asked people their subjective experience of temperature, we all know there's drafts, there's other things relating to how someone feels, not just the thermometer reading. They felt much warmer than the control homes. Now, one way you could have made it warmer is just run your heater for longer. So that's why you need to measure this from every angle. We found actually, even though the intervention homes were warmer, they used significantly less gas than the control homes. So this was really important to show. One of the interventions we did was sometimes take out a gas heater and put in a split system. So you might expect the intervention homes to have dropped in gas but increased in electricity. That wasn't the case. As you can see there was no difference between groups in electricity. So we're making them warmer, using less gas. Okay, we think we're succeeding here in the thermal shell somewhere. We're making the house more energy efficient. Another concern people have is that you might provide this new gear to a household and they'll use it more, like the rebound effect. I would argue in some of these energy poverty households, you want a bit of rebound effect because they're not using it enough for health. But you don't want too much. You don't want them to be going crazy and not being able to afford the bill, obviously. And actually, we didn't see any signs of this at all. The intervention group were less likely to use their main heater than the controls, and also less likely to resort to other things like using a portable heater, going to bed early, the sort of things people talk to us about when they really are too cold. One of the important findings linked to health, but also sort of more holistic, we asked 2 different quality of life surveys. And the graph here shows the ASCOT, which is around social care needs. And you can see on the left there, before winter and after winter in the control group, they're actually declining on the ASCOT scale, whereas the intervention group is showing an increase from before winter to after winter. And so essentially needing fewer social care, less social care assistance in the intervention group. And another of the quality of life scales, the SF36, there was significantly better mental health outcomes in the intervention and the control. And I think this is probably around social connectedness. When your home is too cold, you feel like you don't want to invite people around. You feel uncomfortable about your home being a welcoming place for visitors, where when it's warm enough, you can be much more socially connected. So the bean counters were really interested in the healthcare cost argument to these upgrades. And so this is some data combining healthcare costs over the winter period. Healthy Homes ran for 3 winter periods, 2018, 2019, 2020. And you can see for all of them there, more healthcare costs in the control group than the intervention group. The bulk of these savings were fewer hospital admissions. So it looked like we were doing something to make the intervention group show up to hospital less. And even if you change that slightly, hospital's very expensive. And so you're saving serious money. And when we mapped that out, looking ahead 10 years, this is extrapolated data because we only had that one winter to compare, because then the control groups had their home upgraded, so we couldn't compare anymore. but essentially our average upgrade cost came in under $3,000, $2,800. For one winter for one person, we saved about $900 in healthcare. And that's on top of the gas reduction predominantly, and the energy saving was $85. And this really is the same story as New Zealand. If you're thinking of these retrofits as an energy saving intervention, you're missing a big part of the puzzle. For every dollar we saved in energy, we saved $10 in health. And you can see here by the third year, the net costs have gone below zero. So essentially these upgrades were paying for themselves from a government perspective in less than 3 years. Now, I've talked a lot about data and the importance of randomized trials, but I wanted to bring it back to the people because I think we're here at VCOSS. We need to think about the individuals that have these issues with energy poverty, that have ongoing chronic health issues, and how we might tackle the problem. So Heather was in her late 70s. She had a brick home and it didn't have a gas connection. Actually, even from the 70s, her husband had some allergies, and so they couldn't have gas in their house, which was pretty rare back then. But what it did mean was she had 3 electric heat banks that were 1970s technology, massive, like think of a huge chest freezer or something. These heat banks were bigger than that, and extremely inefficient. So what we did was take those out and replace them with one modern split system. And you can see there her electricity use went from 43 kilowatt hours a day in winter 2020 to 11 kilowatt hours a day in winter 2021. But it's actually much more impressive than that, because she used to report only getting the house up to 13 or 14 degrees with the heat bank, and now she was 18, 19 degrees, to a level she was very happy with the split system. So we got some quotes from Heather, and they focused around this quality of life and bill saving theme. So she said, "I know I can afford it, whereas you're scared before because it's costing too much. Now I'm excited to get my bills to see how much I've saved. It's a funny turnaround." "I wouldn't have family come and visit me in winter because my house was too cold." Her son lived in Alice Springs, so I think that exacerbated the problem, to ask him to come to Victoria 1. And, there were times of year where he just wouldn't come. "They were used to having gas and more heating. Here I am sitting under a split system with visitors. How good is that? In the middle of winter. So this is great. I've got my life back." And she actually felt previously, when I visited her a few times, and one was a beautiful sunny winter day, the responsiveness of the split system was something she really valued. So she could be outside in the garden during the day, which she really loved, come in, put it on for 20 minutes, and the house was up to heat. Whereas previously with the heat banks, she felt she needed to be in her lounge room on the couch because she knew she was paying heaps for it, and she couldn't. Even if she wanted to be outside, she felt she couldn't be, because she knew how much she was spending to get the lounge room even up to like 13 or 14 degrees. Another woman who I call Judy, and I wanted to thank actually Madison Tallarico, who was our student intern at the time, who came out with me and helped me do these case studies. It was a fantastic insight into some of our participants. Judy was in her late 60s and had a long history of physical and mental health problems right from birth, problems with cerebral palsy, and she'd had a car accident that made her knee and balance worse, asthma, which clearly is related to cold homes, anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of a few different things. So her upgrade, we did a number of things: curtains, draft ceiling, and a split system. And even though in healthy homes we concentrated on the main living area normally, Judy had a special request, and her issue was getting too cold between getting into and out of the shower. So those wheelchair transfers into and out of the shower. So her request was a little split system in her bathroom, which was quite unusual, but we could accommodate that. So we did that, and it really changed her life for these sort of long wheelchair transfers where she would be too cold and having to wrap herself in towels. This split system, they could operate from the bedroom, switch it on, go in there 15 minutes later, it was already warm, just totally changed her life. And some of her quotes, I want to stay as independent as I possibly can. Staying warm's the best thing. If I get too cold, all my muscles and tendons just stiffen up and I can't move. And that feeding into her mental health. So this has made it a lot more comfortable, a lot warmer and a lot safer in my head because I feel like nothing can hurt me when I'm home. And so I really want to thank these participants too, just for opening up to us, because it was really impressive to hear their stories. And finally, just acknowledging this was a big and complex project. So Sustainability Victoria ran it. We had a research partner up in Sydney, UTS. We had worked with local councils to recruit households, and they were fantastic. And our delivery partner, the Australian Energy Foundation, who helped run it, along with Uniting and GVCE, who actually did the home visits. So thank you, and I look forward to the panel discussion.